I'm continuing to look to the Bible to speak to me and to speak to us as we grapple with and contend for racial equality. And this Psalm 69 I find so profound, and there's so much richness and relevance to this current time. If you haven't heard the other videos, then go read Psalm 69. The verse that I'm at today is verse 19 through to verse 21. Psalm 69:19 says, "You know my reproach and my shame and my dishonour. My foes are all known to you. Reproaches have broken my heart so that I am in despair. I looked for pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none. They gave me poison for food, and for my thirst they gave me sour wine to drink." When I started in Psalm 69, we heard verses that were the cry of the oppressed. And as uncomfortable as it is, especially for those who may not have suffered racial injustice, racism, bias, prejudice, for those of us who haven't suffered that, it may be uncomfortable to hear the words of the oppressed. We might want to skip over that and get to a rejoicing part. But again, this psalm repeats, well, it's not so much repetition, but it speaks again of this cry. But there's something particular about this I want us to see. So firstly, let's not ignore the fact that this is the cry of someone in despair. That's what verse 20 says. "Reproaches have broken my heart so that I am in despair." And those of us who have not suffered from racism, and those of us who have been benefited from the privilege that we have, need to recognise that there are many whose hearts are broken, just beaten down, and have accepted that this is just the way the world is. And that doesn't take away the desperation. It's like breaking a horse that says, "I've just given up." And I think we have the opportunity at this time to speak up and say, let's fight again, and let's see breakthrough. Because the story of this person in the psalm is, he says, "I looked for pity, but there was none." I can't help but think of the events of George Floyd's death, crying out, looking for someone to help, someone to save him, someone to have pity, and there was none. "For comforters, but I found none." Don't let us make that statement be true ever again, that someone could say, "I was looking for an ally, I was looking for someone to stand with me, but there wasn't anybody." Let us make sure that we are allies, that we stand with those who are oppressed, those who are racially mistreated, and stand with them and fight with them and give space for their voice to come through. Reproaches have broken my heart. So that's my dishwasher going off there. Reproaches have broken my heart so that I'm in despair. The cry of the psalmist is, "I had no one to stand there with me, but I need someone." But there's hope in this without realising it. I don't think the psalmist knew what they were writing when they said, "You know my reproach and my shame and my dishonour." You know my reproach, you know my shame. And I suspect the original context for that was, "Lord, you know about it. You know everything, God, so you know about it. You know the shame that I'm under. You know the reproach, the injustice that I'm under." But for those of us that now live on the other side of the cross, in the light of Jesus, this is a personal thing that says, God, you know reproach, you know shame. The New Testament tells us that Jesus endured the cross and the shame for the joy that was set before him. Jesus endured shame, he endured reproach, and so These words take on a special meaning now of, you know my reproach. You've experienced it, Jesus. You have walked in these shoes. You have experienced shame and rejection and lack of justice and wrongly being accused. You've suffered that, Jesus. You've been in my place. And so in the light of that, and the light of that cry that says, you know my reproach, you know my shame, you know my dishonour, you've been there, Jesus, you've worn those shoes. We should never be able to say, I looked for pity, but there was none, because God looks down. I looked for comforters, but I found none, because he is the comforter of all. And that's not a cop-out. We need to take action. We need to make sure that in the earthly realm, this does not continue, that men and women do not continue to mistreat other men and women in this way because of the colour of their skin or their ethnicity. But in the heavenly realm, it is true that he hears, that he is our comforter, that he looks down and he knows the pain. He took every shame, every misjustice, every dishonour upon him, and he bore that for us. So he knows. They gave me poison for food, and for my thirst they gave me sour wine to drink. Jesus hung on the cross, and they offered him sour wine, vinegar. It wasn't really a great drink at all. This psalm, in the midst of the cry of the oppressed, is messianic. It speaks of Jesus, and it looks forward to the day that was yet to come for the psalmist, but we live in the light of that. Jesus bore every shame to set us free. He knows the pain. He's been there. Thank you, Jesus. God bless.